The story opens on a bustling train platform in the heart of a busy city. A middle-aged woman named Patricia boards the train, clutching her purse tightly as she scans the nearly full carriage for an empty seat. Her face is tense, her lips pressed into a thin line, and her eyes dart around with an air of discomfort. She adjusts her scarf nervously, glancing at her watch to confirm that she's running late for an important appointment. Patricia had always been particular about her surroundings. Some might even say overly cautious. To her, life was all about maintaining control, keeping things predictable, and ensuring everything aligned perfectly with her expectations. Today, however, something felt off. The train was overcrowded, people were talking loudly, and the scent of coffee lingered heavily in the air. It made her uneasy. As she walked down the narrow aisle, Patricia spotted two available seats side by side near the window. Relief washed over her face briefly until she noticed who occupied one of them. A tall man wearing a crisp white coat, his dark skin standing out against the brightness of his attire. He appeared to be engrossed in a medical journal, occasionally jotting notes in a small notebook beside him. His demeanor exuded calmness and professionalism, but Patricia didn't notice any of that. Instead, her mind raced with assumptions and judgments. She hesitated mid-step, her body stiffening as if rooted to the spot. "Not there," she muttered under her breath, barely audible above the hum of conversations around her. Her gaze shifted quickly, searching for another option, but every other seat was taken. Frustration bubbled inside her as she stood frozen, torn between sitting next to him or continuing to stand awkwardly in the crowded aisle. Her internal conflict grew louder with each passing second. "Why does this have to happen today?" she thought irritably. Her fingers tightened around the strap of her handbag, betraying her growing unease. Finally, after what felt like minutes of indecision, Patricia decided to take matters into her own hands. Clearing her throat loudly, she leaned toward the man and said sharply, "Excuse me, do you mind moving your bag? I'd like to sit here." The man looked up from his journal, startled by her tone. He blinked once before realizing she was referring to the small satchel resting innocently on the adjacent seat. With a polite smile, he reached over and lifted it onto his lap without uttering a word. But Patricia wasn't satisfied. She glanced at the now empty seat, then back at him, her expression hardening further. After a moment of hesitation, she turned away entirely, muttering something about finding another spot. A young couple nearby exchanged puzzled glances, while an elderly woman raised her eyebrows disapprovingly. Patricia ignored them all, her cheeks flushing red as she moved farther down the aisle. Though she eventually found a cramped corner to perch in, her agitation only deepened. Little did she know, fate had other plans for her, and karma was already lurking just around the corner. Patricia settled into her cramped corner seat, trying to ignore the discomfort of her surroundings. The train jolted forward, swaying slightly as it picked up speed. Her arms were crossed tightly over her chest and she stared straight ahead, avoiding eye contact with anyone around her. She told herself that she had made the right decision by not sitting next to the man in the white coat. After all, she reasoned silently, it's not about his skin color, it's just better this way. But deep down, Patricia couldn't shake the nagging feeling that people were watching her. Whispers floated through the air like invisible threads, weaving together a tapestry of judgment she could almost feel pressing against her skin. Every time someone glanced in her direction, her heart skipped a beat. Was it her imagination, or were they talking about her? She shifted uncomfortably, tugging at the hem of her scarf as if trying to shield herself from unseen eyes. Meanwhile, the man she had refused to sit beside continued reading his medical journal, seemingly unfazed by the earlier exchange. His calm demeanor stood in stark contrast to Patricia's growing unease. Occasionally, he would pause to jot down notes, his pen moving smoothly across the page. He was focused, professional, and radiated an aura of quiet confidence. Yet, despite his composed exterior, he wasn't oblivious to the tension that had unfolded moments ago. In fact, a small part of him felt a flicker of sadness, not for himself, but for the woman who seemed so burdened by her own prejudices. The train rattled onward, stopping briefly at another station before continuing its journey. As more passengers boarded, the carriage became even more crowded. Patricia found herself squeezed between a teenager listening to loud music on headphones and a businessman typing furiously on his laptop. The noise grated on her nerves, amplifying her frustration. How unfair, she thought bitterly, that she had ended up in such an unpleasant situation, all because of one stubborn refusal. Just then, a sudden announcement crackled over the intercom, causing everyone to look up. "Attention, passengers," came the voice of the conductor. "Due to unforeseen circumstances, we will be experiencing delays along the route. We apologize for any inconvenience caused." Groans erupted throughout the carriage as people shifted restlessly, adjusting to the news. Patricia sighed heavily, slumping further into her seat. This day was turning out worse than she'd anticipated. As the minutes dragged on, Patricia began to feel increasingly trapped. The lack of personal space, combined with the stifling heat inside the train, left her feeling suffocated. Her thoughts drifted back to the empty seat beside the man in the white coat. It looked so inviting now, spacious, quiet, and near the window where fresh air occasionally seeped in. Why hadn't she just sat there? Surely it wouldn't have killed her to share a bench with someone for a short ride. Her internal debate was interrupted when the train lurched unexpectedly, throwing everyone off balance. Bags toppled from overhead racks, and several passengers stumbled into one another. Amid the chaos, a child nearby started crying loudly, adding to the mounting stress inside the carriage. Patricia gripped the edge of her seat tightly, her knuckles turning white as she tried to steady herself. For a brief moment, she caught sight of the man in the white coat calmly helping a flustered elderly woman retrieve her fallen belongings. His kindness struck her, though she quickly pushed the thought aside. Little did Patricia realize this chaotic delay was only the beginning of what awaited her. Karma, as unpredictable as ever, was already setting its gears in motion, and soon she would find herself facing consequences far greater than mere inconvenience. As the train continued its delayed journey, Patricia's frustration reached new heights. Every bump and jolt of the carriage seemed to amplify her growing irritation. She glanced at her watch again, tapping her foot impatiently against the floor. Her appointment was looming closer, and with each passing minute, she felt more certain that she would miss it entirely. The thought sent a fresh wave of anxiety coursing through her body. Her eyes wandered involuntarily toward the seat near the window, where the man in the white coat still sat. To her dismay, no one else had taken the empty spot beside him. It remained, conspicuously vacant, almost taunting her with its availability. The irony wasn't lost on her. She could have been sitting there comfortably, enjoying some semblance of peace amidst the chaos. Instead, she was crammed into an increasingly suffocating corner, surrounded by strangers whose proximity only heightened her unease. The doctor, oblivious to her lingering gaze, appeared completely absorbed in his work. He flipped through the pages of his journal methodically, pausing occasionally to underline key points or scribble additional notes. His calm demeanor stood out starkly against the restless energy of the crowded train. At one point, he glanced up briefly, catching sight of Patricia staring at him. For a fleeting moment their eyes met, but Patricia quickly looked away, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. Just as she turned her head, another unexpected announcement crackled over the intercom. "Attention, passengers," came the voice of the conductor once more. "We are approaching our next stop. Please ensure you have all your belongings before exiting the train." The words barely registered with Patricia until she realized something alarming. The station they were pulling into sounded familiar. Too familiar. Her heart sank as she frantically rummaged through her handbag, searching for the small slip of paper containing her appointment details. Sure enough, when she finally located it, her fears were confirmed. This was her stop. Panic surged through her veins. How could this be happening? She hadn't prepared herself to disembark. She hadn't even gathered her things yet. In her haste to stand up, Patricia accidentally bumped into the teenager beside her, causing his headphones to fall off. "Hey, watch it!" he snapped irritably, glaring at her. Mortified, Patricia stammered an apology, clutching her bag tightly as she pushed past other passengers. But the narrow aisle was congested and everyone seemed to move slower than usual. Each second felt like an eternity as she struggled to make her way toward the exit. Meanwhile, the man in the white coat noticed the commotion unfolding near the doors. Without hesitation, he closed his journal and rose from his seat, stepping aside to allow others to pass. As Patricia approached, flustered and disheveled, she found herself face to face with him once again. Their eyes locked briefly, and for a split second she saw a flicker of understanding in his expression. Not judgment, not anger, but quiet empathy. "Are you getting off here?" he asked politely, gesturing toward the open door ahead. His tone was calm and reassuring, offering a rare moment of kindness amidst the chaos. Patricia hesitated, unsure how to respond. Pride warred with desperation inside her. Finally, she nodded, curtly, muttering a terse yes before rushing forward. Yet as she stepped onto the platform, she couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had shifted. The encounter left her unsettled, not because of anything he had said or done, but because of the uncomfortable truth it forced her to confront. Her choices had consequences, and those consequences might follow her far beyond the confines of this train ride. Unbeknownst to Patricia, her day was about to take yet another surprising turn, one that would challenge everything she believed about fairness, respect, and human connection. As Patricia stepped off the train, her mind raced with a mix of relief and frustration. She had made it to her stop just in time, but the chaotic exit left her feeling disheveled and out of sorts. Her scarf was askew, her hair slightly mussed, and her handbag strap dug uncomfortably into her shoulder as she hurried toward the platform's edge. Glancing at her watch again, she realized how tight her schedule now was. Every second counted if she wanted to salvage her day. The station was bustling with activity, people rushing to catch connecting trains, others waiting patiently for arrivals, and a few simply standing around chatting. Patricia tried to weave through the crowd as quickly as possible, muttering apologies under her breath whenever she accidentally brushed against someone. Her eyes darted toward the exit signs, searching for the fastest route to her destination. But fate seemed determined to test her patience further. Just as she reached the staircase leading out of the station, a loud voice boomed over the intercom system once more. "Attention passengers. Due to technical difficulties, all outgoing routes are temporarily suspended. We apologize for the inconvenience." Gasps rippled through the crowd, followed by murmurs of frustration. Patricia froze mid-step, her jaw dropping in disbelief. This can't be happening, she thought desperately. Her appointment wasn't just any meeting, it was critical. Months of planning and anticipation hinged on this single opportunity, and now it felt like everything was slipping through her fingers. The weight of the situation pressed heavily on her chest, making it hard to breathe. She leaned against the railing for support, closing her eyes briefly as she tried to compose herself. "Are you okay?" a familiar voice asked gently. Patricia opened her eyes to find the man in the white coat standing beside her. He must have gotten off the train at the same stop, though she hadn't noticed him earlier. His presence caught her off guard, stirring up conflicted emotions within her. On one hand, his calm demeanor offered a stark contrast to her frazzled state. On the other, his proximity reminded her of her earlier refusal to sit next to him. Memory that filled her with shame. "I'm fine," she replied curtly, avoiding eye contact. Her tone was clipped, defensive, yet there was no mistaking the tremor in her voice. The doctor studied her for a moment before nodding slowly. "It seems we're both stuck here for now," he said matter-of-factly, gesturing toward the crowded platform. "Might as well make the best of it." Patricia didn't respond immediately. Instead, she turned her attention back to the chaos unfolding around them. People were beginning to form lines near the information desk, hoping for updates or alternative travel options. Others sat down resignedly, pulling out phones or books to pass the time. It was clear that the delay would last longer than anyone anticipated. Feeling increasingly overwhelmed, Patricia slumped onto a nearby bench, clutching her bag tightly. She glanced at the doctor again, who remained standing nearby, scrolling. through his phone. Despite her earlier actions, she couldn't help but notice how composed he appeared, even in such an unpredictable situation. There was something admirable about his ability to remain unruffled, even when things didn't go according to plan. After a few moments of silence, curiosity got the better of her. "Do you work around here?" she blurted out awkwardly, surprising herself with the question. He looked up from his phone and smiled faintly. "Yes, actually. I'm heading to the hospital nearby." "And you?" Patricia hesitated, unsure whether to reveal too much. "I have an important meeting," she admitted reluctantly. "But at this rate?" Her voice trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. To her surprise, the doctor nodded sympathetically. "Delays are frustrating, especially when they affect plans you've worked so hard for. Trust me, I understand." His words struck a chord deep within her. For the first time since boarding the train, Patricia began to wonder if her assumptions about people were truly justified, or if they only served to isolate her further. As the minutes ticked by, she found herself reflecting not just on the events of the day, but also on the choices that had led her here. Little did she know, karma's lesson was far from over, and it would soon force her to confront the very attitudes she had clung to for so long. The delay dragged on, and the station grew increasingly crowded as more passengers arrived, only to be met with the same disappointing news. Patricia sat rigidly on the bench, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, trying to maintain some semblance of composure. But inside, she was a storm of frustration, guilt, and mounting anxiety. The doctor remained nearby, leaning casually against a pillar while scrolling through his phone. His calm presence continued to contrast sharply with her inner turmoil. As time passed, their conversation resumed hesitantly. Patricia found herself drawn into talking despite her initial reluctance. There was something about the way he spoke, calm, measured, and without judgment, that made it easier for her to open up, even if only slightly. "So what kind of meeting is it?" he asked politely, breaking the silence between them. His tone was casual, but there was genuine curiosity behind his words. Patricia hesitated before answering. "It's a job interview," she admitted reluctantly. "A really important one I've been preparing for weeks." She sighed heavily, shaking her head. "I don't know why everything has to go wrong today." The doctor nodded thoughtfully. "Job interviews can be stressful enough without unexpected delays. I'm sure whoever's interviewing you will understand the situation." She gave him a skeptical look. "You think so?" "They seemed pretty strict when I spoke to them last week." Her voice softened as she added, almost to herself, "This was supposed to be my chance to start over, to prove myself." He tilted his head slightly, studying her expression. Sometimes life throws obstacles our way to remind us that we're stronger than we realize. Maybe this is just a test of patience. Patricia frowned at the idea. "A test? It feels more like bad luck." She paused, then glanced at him cautiously. "Do you always stay this calm during disruptions?" He chuckled softly. "Not always. But being a doctor teaches you to adapt quickly. You learn that things rarely go exactly as planned, and sometimes those unplanned moments lead to unexpected opportunities." His words lingered in the air, planting seeds of reflection in Patricia's mind. She thought back to her behavior on the train, the refusal to sit beside him, the assumptions she had made based solely on appearances. Wasn't that another form of rigidity, much like her insistence on sticking to her perfectly laid out plans? The realization gnawed at her conscience, though she wasn't ready to admit it aloud. Just then, a commotion erupted near the information desk. A young woman holding a toddler rushed forward, visibly distressed. "Excuse me?" she called out, to anyone who would listen. "Does anyone know where the nearest pharmacy is? My son has asthma and I forgot his inhaler." The crowd murmured sympathetically, but no one stepped forward to help. Patricia watched the scene unfold, feeling torn between concern and helplessness. She didn't know what to do, or even where to begin helping. Before she could process further, the doctor pushed away from the pillar and approached the woman. "Ma'am, may I take a look at your son?" he offered gently, already reaching into his satchel. "I'm a doctor. Let me see if I can assist." The woman's eyes widened with relief. "Oh, thank God, yes, please." Patricia watched intently as the doctor knelt beside the child, speaking soothingly while examining him. From his bag he pulled out a small portable device, a nebulizer, and began setting it up. Within minutes the boy's breathing stabilized and the tension in the mother's face melted into gratitude. "Thank you so much," she said tearfully, clutching her son close. "I don't know what I would have done without you." "It's my job," the doctor replied humbly, giving her a reassuring smile. "Just make sure to get him to a pharmacy as soon as possible." Patricia observed the entire exchange silently, her heart pounding. Here was the same man she had dismissed earlier, not because of anything he had done, but because of unfounded biases. And yet, here he was now, saving a stranger's life without hesitation or expectation of reward. The weight of her earlier actions hit her like a freight train, leaving her shaken. As the doctor returned to his spot near the pillar, Patricia stared at him, her emotions swirling. Guilt, admiration, and shame battled within her, forcing her to confront uncomfortable truths about herself. Little did she know, this moment would mark the beginning of a profound change, one that karma had been quietly orchestrating all along. Patricia's mind raced as she replayed the doctor's actions in her head. His calm efficiency, his kindness toward the panicked mother, and his humility afterward, it all stood in stark contrast to the way she had treated him earlier. She felt a lump rise in her throat, making it hard to swallow. For the first time in years, Patricia found herself questioning not just her behavior, but the beliefs that had shaped it. The station was still chaotic, with people milling about, restlessly, waiting for updates on their delayed journeys. But Patricia barely noticed them anymore. Her focus was entirely on the man standing nearby, who now leaned casually against the pillar once again, scrolling through his phone as if nothing extraordinary had happened. To him, helping someone in need might have been routine, but to Patricia, it felt monumental. Summoning every ounce of courage she could muster, Patricia rose from the bench and approached him hesitantly. "Excuse me," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly. When he looked up, his expression remained neutral, though there was a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. "Yes?" he asked politely. Patricia took a deep breath, clutching her bag tightly to steady herself. I wanted to apologize," she began, stumbling over her words. "For earlier on the train, the way I acted, it wasn't right." The doctor studied her for a moment, his gaze unwavering yet kind. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Thank you for saying that. It takes strength to admit when we've made mistakes." His response caught her off guard. She had expected judgment or even indifference, but instead, he offered understanding. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes as she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "I let my assumptions get the better of me. I judged you before I even knew anything about you. And after what I just saw you do for that woman and her son—" She shook her head, unable to finish the sentence. He gave her a small, reassuring smile. "We all make assumptions sometimes. What matters is whether we're willing to challenge them and learn from them." Patricia nodded, feeling both humbled and grateful. "You're right. I've spent so much of my life clinging to control, to predictability. But today has shown me how fragile those things really are. Maybe I need to start looking beyond my own expectations." Her words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. The doctor didn't respond immediately, allowing her the space to process her thoughts. After a moment, he spoke gently. "Life has a way of teaching us lessons when we least expect it. Sometimes, those lessons come from people we don't anticipate, meeting or moments we never planned for." Patricia managed a weak smile, her heart feeling lighter than it had in hours. Though she knew this single apology wouldn't erase years of ingrained biases, it was a start. A step toward becoming someone who saw others for who they truly were, rather than who she assumed them to be. Just then, another announcement crackled over the intercom. Attention, passengers. Service will resume shortly. Please prepare to board your trains. A collective sigh of relief rippled through the crowd as people began gathering their belongings. The doctor glanced at his watch, then turned back to Patricia. Looks like we'll both be moving on soon. Good luck with your interview, and remember, adaptability can be just as valuable as preparation. With that, he picked up his satchel and headed toward the platform, leaving Patricia standing alone amidst the bustling crowd. As she watched him go, a strange sense of clarity washed over her. The day hadn't gone according to plan, but perhaps that wasn't such a bad thing. Karma had delivered its lesson, not through punishment, but through perspective. Little did Patricia know, the final chapter of her journey was about to unfold in ways she couldn't yet imagine. As the train finally resumed its journey, Patricia found herself seated in a quiet corner, her mind still reeling from everything that had transpired. The earlier chaos of the station now felt distant, replaced by an overwhelming sense of introspection. She replayed the doctor's words in her head, his gentle advice about adaptability and challenging assumptions, and realized how much they resonated with her current state. For the first time, she began to see her rigid need for control not as a strength, but as a limitation. The train pulled into her intended stop, and Patricia disembarked with a mixture of apprehension and determination. Her interview was scheduled to begin in less than 30 minutes, and though she knew she might be cutting it close, something inside her felt different. The weight of her earlier prejudices no longer weighed her down. Instead, she carried a newfound resolve to approach life and people with openness rather than judgment. When she arrived at the office building, the receptionist greeted her warmly, handing over a clipboard for signing in. "You're here just in time," the woman said cheerfully. "They've been expecting you." Patricia nodded gratefully, taking a moment to compose herself before heading upstairs. As she entered the waiting area outside the interview room, she noticed a familiar face sitting across from her. It was the doctor, the same man whose kindness and professionalism had left such a profound impact on her earlier that day. He glanced up, surprised to see her, and offered a polite smile. "I didn't realize you were coming here," he said, his tone friendly but reserved. Patricia hesitated, then decided to speak honestly. "Neither did I. At least not until today, but I guess karma works in mysterious ways." He chuckled softly, raising an eyebrow. "Karma?" She smiled faintly, feeling a mix of nerves and gratitude. "Let's just say this isn't exactly where I expected my day to lead, but maybe that's a good thing." Before he could respond, the door to the interview room opened, and a panel of 3 individuals stepped out. Among them was the doctor himself, who exchanged brief introductions with the other members before turning back to Patricia. "Shall we get started?" he asked, gesturing toward the room. For a fleeting moment, Patricia felt panic rise in her chest. This wasn't part of her plan, not at all. Yet as she followed him inside, she reminded herself of what he had told her earlier. Adaptability was key. Taking a deep breath, she sat down and prepared to present herself, not just as a candidate, but as someone willing to grow and learn. Throughout the interview, Patricia spoke candidly about her experiences, her aspirations, and even the challenges she faced that very day. When asked why she believed she was suited for the role, she paused, thoughtfully before answering, "Because I understand the importance of seeing beyond surface-level impressions. People deserve to be valued for who they truly are, not judged based on preconceived notions." The panel exchanged approving glances, and when the session ended, the doctor extended his hand with a warm smile. "Thank you for your honesty. We'll be in touch soon." Walking out of the building later that afternoon, Patricia felt lighter, as if a burden she hadn't fully acknowledged had finally been lifted. Whether or not she got the job, she knew one thing for certain. Karma had delivered its lesson, not through punishment, but through growth. And for the first time in years, Patricia welcomed the uncertainty of what lay ahead. This final part ties together the themes of redemption, personal growth, and second chances. By placing Patricia in a position where she must confront her biases directly, the story delivers a satisfying resolution, while leaving readers inspired by the transformative power of self-awareness and humility.